All eyes turned to the man in the stained apron scrubbing burnt pans. In the corner of Lucille Idal's kitchen, his calloused hands moved mechanically through greasy water, and his weathered face showed years of defeat. But those hands had once created culinary masterpieces that made food critics weep with joy. It was a cold October evening when Thomas "Tommy" Sullivan, 43 years old, arrived for his shift at Manhattan's most prestigious 3 Michelin-starred restaurant. His cheap work boots squeaked against the immaculate kitchen floor as he made his way to the dish pit. Tommy had worked as a dishwasher for 2 years now, invisible to the celebrity chefs in their pristine whites, transparent to the sous chefs who barked orders, non-existent to the critics who paid $500 per person to experience culinary perfection. He scrubbed the same pots where magic happened nightly, his eyes occasionally catching glimpses of plating techniques he'd invented over a decade ago. The restaurant was in complete chaos that week. Lucille Idal was about to lose its 3 Michelin stars, a catastrophic failure that would destroy owner Victoria Ashton's empire and reputation. Every dish presented to the advanced critics had been deemed technically flawless but emotionally empty. The final evaluation was in 4 days, and panic had infected every corner of the kitchen like a virus. "This is unacceptable," shouted Chef Antoine Rousseau, the restaurant's temperamental French executive chef, throwing a perfectly seared duck breast into the trash. He was 38, classically trained at Le Cordon Bleu, and convinced his technique was infallible. "For days. We have 4 days to create something that will save this restaurant." "Antoine, we've tried everything," said Isabella Romano, the ambitious 32-year-old sous chef with dreams of her own restaurant. Modern Italian, deconstructed French, Nordic minimalism. "The critics say it's all been done before. Then we haven't tried hard enough." Antoine slammed his hand on the stainless steel counter. "I did not spend 15 years perfecting my craft to lose stars because some critics are bored." Marcus Chen, the 29-year-old pastry chef known for his cruel humor, leaned against the dessert station. "Maybe we should ask the dishwasher for ideas. I hear prison food is very innovative. Lots of creativity with limited ingredients." Several cooks laughed. Tommy kept his head down, scrubbing harder. "Oh yes, the criminal," Antoine said with mock interest, walking toward the dish pit. "Tell me, Sullivan, what did they serve in your cell block? Perhaps we can recreate mystery meat surprise for the Michelin inspectors." Tommy didn't respond. He'd learned that silence was safer than confrontation. "Answer Chef Rousseau when he speaks to you," Isabella snapped. "Or is basic respect something they don't teach in prison?" "I'm just here to wash dishes," Tommy said quietly, his voice barely audible over the running water. "That's all you're qualified for," Marcus added, piping cream onto a tart. "Stick to your station, convict. Leave the artistry to actual chefs." Victoria Ashton swept into the kitchen at that moment, her designer heels clicking authoritatively. She was 51, perfectly coiffed, and radiating the kind of stress that comes from watching a $20 million investment crumble. Status report. "Now. We're nowhere," Antoine admitted, his arrogance deflating slightly. "Every dish I create is perfect technically, but the critics want emotion, soul. Something I apparently cannot manufacture." "Then manufacture it faster," Victoria said coldly. "I bought this restaurant to be the best in New York, not to be footnote in culinary history. Figure it out, or I'll find chefs who can." "Perhaps," came a distinguished voice from the kitchen entrance. "The problem is not the technique, but the heart." Everyone turned. Chef Bernard Laurent stood in the doorway, a legend in the culinary world. Now 69 and retired from cooking, but still consulting for the most elite establishments. His mere presence commanded respect. He walked with a cane, but his eyes were sharp as chef's knives. "Chef Laurent," Victoria said, surprised but pleased. "I didn't expect you until tomorrow." "I came early," Bernard said, his French accent still thick after 40 years in America. "I wanted to observe the kitchen naturally, not the performance you would stage for me." He walked slowly through the kitchen, examining stations, tasting sauces, observing techniques. The chef stood straighter, nervous under his scrutiny. Then Bernard's eyes landed on Tommy at the dish pit. For a long moment, the old chef stared. His expression shifted from curiosity to recognition to something like shock. "You, Bernard said quietly, approaching the dish station. "I know you." Tommy's hands froze in the soapy water. "I don't think so, chef." "No, I never forget a face," Bernard insisted, leaning closer. "And I never forget hands that create art." He looked at Tommy's scarred, calloused hands. "Those are not dishwasher's hands. Those are a creator's hands." "You're mistaken," Tommy said, trying to turn away. But Bernard grabbed Tommy's wrist gently, examining his fingers. "The way you hold that scrub brush. The angle. The precision. You're not cleaning, you're practicing motion. Muscle memory." His eyes widened. "Mon Dieu. Thomas Sullivan." The kitchen went completely silent. "What?" Antoine looked confused. "The dishwasher?" "Not just a dishwasher," Bernard said, his voice filled with awe and sadness. "This is Thomas Sullivan, winner of the James Beard Award 11 years ago, creator of Verse and Vine, the most innovative restaurant of its generation, the man who revolutionized culinary molecular gastronomy and fusion before disappearing." Isabella laughed nervously. "That's impossible. Thomas Sullivan is dead, or disappeared, not washing our dishes. I am standing right here," Bernard said firmly, looking at a ghost. "Thomas, why are you hiding in a dish pit?" Tommy pulled his hands from the water, drying them slowly. "Because ghosts belong in the shadows, Chef Laurent. Not in kitchens like this. You know each other," Victoria demanded. "I ate at Verse and Vine 12 times, Bernard said, never taking his eyes off Tommy. Each meal was transcendent. Thomas was not just talented, he was visionary. He saw food as language, as emotion, as memory made tangible. Was being the operative word, Tommy said bitterly. "That person doesn't exist anymore." "Why?" Bernard asked. "What happened to you?" Marcus couldn't resist. "He burned down his own restaurants and killed someone. That's what happened. It was all over the news." Tommy flinched like he'd been struck. "That was never proven," Bernard said sharply. "The case was controversial. Many of us believed Thomas was innocent. The jury didn't," Antoine said dismissively. 6 years in prison. That was the verdict. 6 years for something I didn't do," Tommy said, his voice finally gaining strength. "But try explaining that to the world after your reputation is destroyed." Bernard placed a hand on Tommy's shoulder. "Tell me, tell everyone, what really happened." Tommy looked around the kitchen. Every chef, every cook, every prep assistant was staring. He'd kept this story buried for so long, but something in Bernard's kind eyes made him want to speak. 11 years ago, Tommy began, his voice rough. "I owned 2 restaurants. Verse and Vine in Brooklyn and Meridian in Manhattan. Both had Michelin stars. Both were my life. My sous chef Jake Martinez was not just my employee, he was my best friend. My brother in everything but blood." He paused, the memories clearly painful. One night, both restaurants burned. Simultaneously, Jake was closing Verse and Vine alone. He died in the fire. The investigation concluded it was faulty equipment. I'd installed a molecular gastronomy setup for controlled combustion. They said I was negligent, reckless, that I prioritized innovation over safety. "And you weren't?" Isabella asked, but her tone was less mocking now. "I was meticulous about safety," Tommy said. "Obsessive. But I had an investor who wanted to buy me out, expand nationally, take my concept corporate. I refused. His name was Richard Castellano. 2 weeks before the fire, he threatened me, said I'd regret not taking his offer." "You're saying he caused the fires?" Victoria asked. "I know he did," Tommy said, "but I couldn't prove it, and his lawyers were better than mine. They painted me as an egomaniac who cut corners for fame. The jury believed them. I lost everything. My restaurants, my reputation, my freedom." He looked down at his hands. "My wife Karen couldn't handle it. The scandal, the trial, the conviction. She left me while I was awaiting sentencing. Took our daughter Sophie, who was 5 years old. Told Sophie I was dead, that it would be easier than explaining her father was a criminal." The kitchen was silent except for the hum of refrigeration units. "Sophie is 16 now," Tommy continued, his voice breaking. "She doesn't know I'm alive. Karen remarried, moved to Connecticut. I've watched my daughter grow up through social media, through photos where I don't exist. That's my punishment, not the prison time. Losing her." Bernard's eyes were wet. Thomas, I am so sorry. Don't be, Tommy said, straightening up. I chose to disappear after prison. Easier than fighting to resurrect a dead reputation. I wash dishes because it's simple. Because no one expects anything. Because I can't fail if I never try. That, Bernard said firmly, is the biggest lie you've ever told yourself. Antoine, who'd been silent, finally spoke. Even if this story is true, even if you were Thomas Sullivan, that was 11 years ago. You've been washing dishes for how long? 2 years. Your skills are gone. Muscle memory fades. Palate dulls. You're not the chef you were. Probably not, Tommy agreed. Definitely not, Marcus added. You're just a has-been with a tragic backstory. Then prove them wrong. Bernard said to Tommy, show them who you were, who you still are. I can't, Tommy said. Won't. Bernard corrected. There's a difference. Victoria, who'd been processing everything, stepped forward. Assuming any of this is true, and I'm not saying I believe it, what exactly are you proposing? Bernard, I'm proposing, Bernard said, that Thomas create a dish for the Michelin evaluation. One dish. Let's see if the magic is still there. Absolutely not, Antoine said immediately. I will not let a dishwasher make a mockery of my kitchen. Your kitchen is already failing, Bernard pointed out. You've created technically perfect food that moves no one. Perhaps what you need is someone who understands that cooking is not just technique, it's soul. I don't have that anymore, Tommy said quietly. Then find it again, Bernard said. For Jake, for Sophie, for yourself. Tommy looked at the old chef, then at the hostile faces around the kitchen, then down at his dishwasher's hands. I wouldn't even know where to start, he admitted. At that exact moment, a young line cook burst through the kitchen doors, panicked. Chef Antoine. The duck confit for the Times crit at the oven malfunctioned. It's completely burned. Antoine's face went white. The critic is here now, seated at table 12. Ordered the tasting menu. The duck was course 4. We have nothing to replace it with. Then we're finished, Victoria said, her voice hollow. The Times will destroy us before Michelin even arrives. Everyone stood frozen, panic spreading. Except Tommy. His hands moved before his brain engaged. He walked to the prep station, pushed past a shocked Isabella, and began pulling ingredients from the cooler. Discarded fennel tops, overripe pears destined for compost, the ends of a dry-aged ribeye, duck bones from yesterday's stock. What are you doing? Antoine demanded. Tommy didn't answer. His hands moved with sudden precision, chopping, searing, reducing. The muscle memory Bernard mentioned flooding back like a dam breaking. He worked in complete silence, in complete focus. Movements economic, purposeful. Within 12 minutes, he had plated something that made everyone lean in to look. On a simple white plate, paper-thin slices of pear that he'd quickly pickled in reduced balsamic and star anise. Fennel top powder creating a green arc. The ribeye ends, seared hard and sliced translucent, ranged like fallen dominoes. A quenelle of duck bone marrow mousse with crispy fried sage. And underneath it all, a glossy reduction of the duck bones with fermented honey and black garlic he'd found in the back of the pantry. Mon Dieu, Bernard whispered. The presentation was avant-garde but accessible. The smell was intoxicating, earthy, sweet, umami-rich. It's called What Remains, Tommy said quietly. Everything on this plate was destined for trash, but there's nobility in scraps, memory in bones, potential in what others discard. You made this, Victoria said slowly, from garbage? From possibility, Tommy corrected. Antoine stared at the plate. The technique, the balance. How did you? Muscle memory doesn't fade, Bernard said with a smile. It just waits. Isabella picked up the plate. I'll take it to table 12. Wait, Marcus said. For once, he wasn't smiling. If this is bad, we're done. If the critic hates it, then we're no worse off than we were 5 minutes ago, Victoria said. Serve it. Isabella carried the plate through the kitchen doors like she was handling a bomb. The kitchen descended into agonizing silence. Every eye was on the door, waiting. 5 minutes passed, then 10. Then Isabella burst back through, her face unreadable. Well? Antoine demanded. The critic, Isabella said slowly, asked to speak to whoever created the dish. Tommy's stomach dropped. That's bad. Actually, Isabella said, and now she was smiling, She's crying. She wants to know who made her remember why she became a food critic. She says it's the most emotionally honest dish she's eaten in 5 years. The kitchen exploded in shocked murmurs. Bernard looked at Tommy with profound satisfaction. Still think you've lost it? Tommy stood there, covered in dishwater and food scraps, looking at his trembling hands. I don't know what I think anymore, he admitted. Victoria stepped forward, her business mind already calculating. Thomas Sullivan, if that's truly who you are, we need to talk now. My office. He's not going anywhere without representation, Bernard said firmly, positioning himself beside Tommy. I'll join you. Antoine looked like he'd swallowed something bitter. This is absurd. One decent plate doesn't erase 11 years of what? Bernard interrupted. Of survival? Of punishment for a crime he didn't commit? Show some humanity, Antoine. They moved to Victoria's office, a sleek space overlooking Manhattan's glittering skyline. Tommy felt completely out of place in his stained uniform, standing on the expensive Persian rug. Victoria sat behind her desk, fingers steepled. I need the truth. All of it. Are you really Thomas Sullivan? Yes, Tommy said simply. Can you prove it? Tommy reached into his pocket and pulled out a worn, laminated card. His James Beard Award winner's credential from 2014. The photo showed a younger, happier man with the same eyes. Victoria examined it, then looked up at Tommy. Why hide this? Why work as a dishwasher? Because it was safe, Tommy said. Because after you lose everything, you stop reaching for anything. You just exist. That ends now, Victoria said decisively. I need you to create the menu for the Michelin evaluation. For days. 7 courses. Can you do it? Tommy's mouth went dry. I don't know if. She's not asking if you can, Bernard interrupted gently. She's asking if you will. Why would you trust me? Tommy asked Victoria. You called me disposable an hour ago. An hour ago, I thought you were just cheap labor, Victoria said bluntly. Now I realize you might be my only chance to save this restaurant. I'm a businesswoman, Thomas. I make calculated risks. You're my best option. How flattering, Tommy said dryly. I'm not here to flatter you, Victoria replied. I'm here to offer you a deal. Create a menu that saves my stars, and I'll pay you $50,000. Plus, I'll fund whatever legal resources you need to clear your name. I have excellent lawyers. Tommy felt his breath catch. You do that. If it benefits me, yes, Victoria said. I told you I'm pragmatic. You save my restaurant. I help you reclaim your life. Fair trade. Bernard nodded approvingly. Victoria may have the warmth of a business contract, but she honors her deals. I've known her 15 years. There's one condition, Victoria added. You work with my existing team. Antoine remains executive chef. You're a consultant. A special project. If you try to take over my kitchen, we're done. I don't want to take over anything, Tommy said. I just want a chance to cook again. To feel like myself again. Then we have an agreement. Victoria extended her hand. Tommy looked at it for a long moment. This was the moment. He could stay safe in his dish pit, or he could risk everything again. He shook her hand. Agreement. Excellent, Victoria said. You start tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. Bernard will work with you on concept. Antoine will assist with execution. Antoine will mutiny, Tommy predicted. Then I'll replace Antoine, Victoria said coldly. I'm losing stars. I don't have time for ego. Mine or his or yours. As they left her office, Bernard pulled Tommy aside. Are you really ready for this? The pressure will be immense. I don't know, Tommy admitted. But I know I have to try. If not for me, then for Jake. He died believing in what we were building. I owe him this. You owe yourself this, Bernard corrected. Jake would want you to live, Thomas. Not just survive. Live. They returned to the kitchen where Antoine, Isabella, and Marcus were waiting with crossed arms and hostile expressions. Let me guess, Antoine said. The dishwasher is now running the kitchen. I'm consulting on the Michelin menu, Tommy said. You're still executive chef. I'm not here to replace you. How generous, Marcus sneered. The convict will let us keep our jobs. Enough, Bernard said sharply. Thomas is here to help. You can accept that with grace or you can leave. Victoria has made her position clear. Isabella studied Tommy carefully. I want to know something. That dish you made, What remains? Where did you learn to plate like that? The asymmetry, the negative space, it's very modern. Very now. I learned it 12 years ago, Tommy said. It wasn't modern then. It was experimental. I guess the world caught up. Or you were ahead of it, Isabella said thoughtfully. What else can you do? I don't know yet, Tommy admitted. I haven't really cooked in over a decade. I don't know if I still have it. We'll find out tomorrow, Bernard said. For tonight, go home. Rest. Tomorrow we rebuild a legend. Tommy left the restaurant in a daze. He walked through Manhattan's cold October streets to his tiny apartment in Queens, a studio that smelled like old cooking oil from the restaurant below. He sat on his mattress and pulled out his phone. After a moment's hesitation, he opened Instagram and searched for his daughter's profile. Sophie Sullivan, 16 years old. Her bio said CT dancer artist living my best life. Her latest photo showed her at a dance recital, mid-leap, radiant with joy. The caption, when you land the solo you've worked for all year. Dreams do come true. Tommy stared at the photo for a long time. She looked so much like her mother, but her smile, that was his smile, the one he used to have. He typed a comment 3 times and deleted it 3 times. What could he say? I'm your father and I'm not dead. Sorry I've been gone for 11 years. Instead, he just liked the photo, a small digital footprint, a way to be part of her life without disrupting it. His phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. This is Isabella Romano. Bernard gave me your number. I want to help with the menu. Not because I like you, because I want to learn. Be there tomorrow at 5 a.m. We'll prep before the others arrive. Tommy stared at the message, then typed back, why? Her response was immediate, because that dish you made tonight reminded me why I became a chef. I haven't felt that in 2 years. I want to feel it again. Tommy smiled slightly. 5 a.m. He barely slept that night. His mind raced with possibilities, ingredients, combinations. The creative part of his brain that had been dormant was suddenly on fire with ideas. At 4:30 a.m., he arrived at Lucille Eat Aisle. Isabella was already there, prep station organized, notepad ready. Okay, she said without preamble. Teach me. How do you create emotion in food? Tommy tied on an apron, a real chef's apron, not his dishwasher's uniform. It felt foreign and familiar at once. You don't create it, he said. You channel it. Every dish tells a story. The question is, whose story are you telling? I don't understand, Isabella said. Tommy walked to the cooler and started pulling ingredients. Most chefs cook to impress. They think about technique, presentation, Michelin stars. But the best food, the food that makes people cry or laugh, or remember that food, comes from something real, something human. He laid out ingredients on the counter. Heirloom tomatoes, burrata. Basil, aged balsamic. What do you see? He asked Isabella. Caprese salad, she said. Classic. Overdone. Wrong, Tommy said. You're seeing ingredients. I'm seeing my grandmother's garden in Queens. I'm seeing Sunday afternoons, when I was 8 years old, learning that food is love made visible. He began preparing the tomatoes with reverent care. She grew these tomatoes in old paint buckets. She couldn't afford proper planters. But those tomatoes tasted like summer and hope and immigrant dreams. He sliced them, ranged them with the burrata and basil, then drizzled the balsamic with the exact wrist motion his grandmother had taught him 35 years ago. Now taste it, Tommy said, and tell me what you feel. Isabella took a bite. Her eyes widened slightly. It's just a caprese, but somehow it tastes different, warmer, more. I don't know. Real, because I'm not making a dish, Tommy explained. I'm sharing a memory. That's the difference. That's what critics respond to when they say food has soul. Isabella scribbled notes frantically. So for the Michelin menu, we need 7 stories? 7 memories, Tommy corrected. 7 emotions. We take the diner on a journey, not just through courses, but through human experience. The kitchen door swung open. Antoine entered, looking like he hadn't slept either. He stopped when he saw Tommy in a chef's apron. You're early, Antoine said, his tone neutral but wary. So are you, Tommy replied. Antoine walked to his station, then turned back. I need you to understand something. This is my kitchen. I've worked here for 5 years building this reputation. I won't let you destroy it. "I'm not here to destroy anything," Tommy said. "I'm here to help you save it." "I don't need saving," Antoine snapped. "I need inspiration." "There's a difference." "Then let's find it together," Tommy offered. "What's your earliest food memory? The moment you knew you wanted to be a chef?" Antoine looked surprised by the question. "Why does that matter?" "Because that's where your soul is," Tommy said. "That's what's missing from your food. The critics say your technique is perfect. They're right. But they also say it's emotionally empty. So where's your emotion? Where's your story?" Antoine was quiet for a long moment. "Then, I was 9 years old. My father was a factory worker in Lyon. We had very little money. But once a year, on my birthday, he would take me to a real restaurant. Not fancy, just real. The chef there made a simple buff bourguignon that I can still taste 34 years later." His voice softened with memory. "I asked my father why this food tasted so much better than home. He said, because the chef puts his heart into the pot along with the meat. I didn't understand then. But later, when I started cooking, I remembered. The chef had been cooking that recipe for 20 years. Every time he made it, he was honoring his own mother who taught him. That's what I tasted. Generational love." Tommy nodded. "That's your story. That's what needs to be on the plate." Antoine looked at him with something between resentment and respect. "How do I do that after making perfect food for so long?" "By admitting perfection isn't the goal," Tommy said. "Connection is. When someone eats your buff bourguignon, they should taste your father's love, your childhood wonder, the years of tradition." Marcus arrived next, his usual smirk notably absent. He watched the three of them talking and seemed uncertain whether to join or attack. "Chen," Tommy called out. "Come here." Marcus approached cautiously. "What? Why do you make pastries?" Tommy asked. "Because I'm good at them," Marcus said defensively. "That's not what I asked. Why pastries specifically? Why not savory? Why not sauces?" Marcus hesitated. "My sister had leukemia when she was 6. She was in the hospital for 2 years. The only thing that made her smile was when I'd sneak in desserts from the bakery near our house. She died when she was 8, but those 2 years, she was happy when she had something sweet." The kitchen was silent. "So you make desserts to make people happy," Tommy said gently. "To give them the same joy your sister had. That's your story. That's what should be in every pastry you create." Marcus's eyes were suspiciously bright. "I've never told anyone that." "Maybe it's time you start telling everyone through your food," Tommy said. Bernard arrived at 6 a.m. to find the 4 chefs working together, talking, sharing stories. He smiled and said nothing, just set up his notepad and began observing. By 8 a.m., they had a concept. 7 courses, each representing a fundamental human emotion: joy, sorrow, love, fear, hope, memory or peace. "It's ambitious," Victoria said when they presented it to her at 9 a.m. "Maybe too ambitious." "The best things always are," Bernard said. "Trust the process." "I'm trusting a convicted felon, a temperamental Frenchman, an over-ambitious sous chef, and a pastry chef with a tragic backstory," Victoria said. "This is either brilliant or catastrophic." "Sometimes," Tommy said, "they're the same thing." Over the next 3 days, the kitchen transformed. Tommy worked 18-hour days, collaborating with each chef, drawing out their stories, translating emotion into flavor and texture. Antoine created a deconstructed buff bourguignon that somehow tasted exactly like childhood nostalgia. Isabella crafted a seafood course using her Sicilian grandmother's technique for bronzino, paired with unexpected kimchi. Her Korean neighbor had taught her to make a dish about cultural bridges and unlikely friendships. Marcus created a dessert called Last Birthday that combined his sister's favorite flavors into something bittersweet and beautiful. He wept while plating the first test version. Tommy himself was working on the centerpiece, the 5th course. He still hadn't told them what it would be. On the afternoon before the Michelin evaluation, as Tommy was testing his course for the 20th time, a young woman entered the kitchen looking lost. "Can I help you?" Isabella asked. The young woman had a dancer's posture and Tommy's eyes. "I'm looking for. I think my father might work here. His name is Thomas Sullivan." Tommy dropped the spoon he was holding. It clattered on the floor, impossibly loud. Sophie turned toward the sound and saw him. For a moment, neither moved. 16 years of absence hung between them like a chasm. "Dad," Sophie whispered. And Tommy did something he hadn't done in 11 years. He started to cry. The kitchen froze. Every chef, every line cook, every prep assistant stopped moving. The only sound was Tommy's ragged breathing as he stared at his daughter. "Sophie," he managed to say. How did you find me?" Sophie's hands were shaking. "You liked my Instagram post, the dance recital. I clicked on your profile and there was a photo, an old one, of you at some award ceremony. I reverse image searched it and found articles about Thomas Sullivan, the chef. Then I saw you were consultant here and I had to know." "Your mother," Tommy said. "Does she know you're here?" "Mom thinks I'm at dance practice," Sophie said, her voice breaking. "She told me you were dead. For 11 years, she told me you died in a car accident when I was 5. But you're not dead. You're here. You've been alive this whole time." She took a step forward, anger mixing with confusion. "Why didn't you find me? Why didn't you tell me you were alive?" Tommy felt Antoine's hand on his shoulder, steadying him. "Because your mother wanted it that way. Because I was in prison, and she thought it would be easier for you to believe I was gone than to know your father was a criminal. But you're not," Sophie said, pulling out her phone. "The first found the articles. I read everything about the fires, the trial. Lots of people thought you were innocent. There were whole forums dedicated to your case. The jury didn't think so," Tommy said quietly. "The jury was wrong," Sophie said fiercely. "And you've been here the whole time? In New York, 20 miles from where I live. I've been watching you," Tommy admitted. "From a distance. Your Instagram, your school's website. I saw every dance recital, every award, every birthday. I just couldn't. I didn't think I had the right to disrupt your life. That wasn't your choice to make," Sophie said, tears streaming down her face. "I deserved to know my father was alive. I deserved to decide if I wanted you in my life." "You're right," Tommy said. "You're completely right. I was a coward." Sophie looked around the kitchen, seeing all the chefs watching. "Is this real? Are you really Thomas Sullivan, the James Beard Award winner?" "I was," Tommy said. "A long time ago." "Show me," Sophie demanded. "If you're really him, show me. Prove you're my father and not just some stranger who looks like old photos." Tommy looked at Bernard, who nodded encouragingly. "Okay," Tommy said. He walked to his prep station, hands steadying as he focused on something familiar. "When you were 4 years old, right before everything fell apart, you had a favorite meal. You asked for it every single birthday, every special occasion." Sophie's breath caught. "How would you know that?" "Because I created it specifically for you," Tommy said, pulling ingredients from the cooler. "You called it princess pasta. It was angel hair with a cream sauce, but the secret was butterfly-shaped vegetables, carrots and zucchini, cut into butterflies. You said they were magical." He began working, his hands moving with muscle memory and love. Thin pasta, delicate cream sauce infused with butter and parmesan. Then the vegetables' precise cuts that transformed them into tiny butterflies, quickly sautéed to maintain their shape. Within 10 minutes, he plated it exactly as he had 16 years ago. A small nest of pasta crowned with a dozen butterfly vegetables, arranged like they were in flight. "You always said the butterflies were flying you to a castle," Tommy said, his voice thick with emotion. "You'd eat them in a specific order, saving the biggest one for last because it was the queen butterfly." Sophie stared at the plate, then up at Tommy, then back at the plate. "Nobody knows about that. Not even Mom. I never told anyone about the queen butterfly. Because it was our secret," Tommy said. "You told me the queen butterfly gave you wishes. And I told you that as long as I could make this dish, all your wishes would come true." Sophie's composure shattered. She ran to Tommy and threw her arms around him, sobbing into his chest. Tommy held his daughter for the first time in 11 years, and the kitchen staff politely turned away, giving them privacy in the moment. "I missed you," Sophie cried. "Every day. Even when I thought you were dead, I missed you." "I missed you too," Tommy whispered. "Every single moment." They stood there for a long time before Sophie pulled back, wiping her eyes. "I can't believe you're really here. I can't believe this is real." "Unfortunately," came Victoria's voice from the kitchen entrance, "we have a situation." Sophie, I'm Victoria Ashton. I own this restaurant. I'm very happy for this reunion, truly. But the Michelin evaluation is tomorrow at 7 p.m. I need your father focused. Mom, Isabella hissed. Read the room. I am reading the room, Victoria said. And I'm reading that we have 17 hours before the most important service of our lives. Thomas, I need you. Can you work? Tommy looked at Sophie. I have to finish this. It's important. But Sophie, can you stay? Can we talk after? Really talk. I'm not going anywhere, Sophie said firmly. I just found you. I'm not losing you again. She can wait in my office, Bernard offered. I'll keep her company. We can talk about her father's legendary career. I have many embarrassing stories. I'd like that, Sophie said, smiling through tears. As Bernard led Sophie away, Antoine approached Tommy. That was your daughter? That's my daughter, Tommy confirmed. The centerpiece course, Antoine said. The fifth course you wouldn't tell us about. It's for her, isn't it? It's about her, Tommy said. About loss and hope and the possibility of redemption. About believing broken things can be fixed. What's the dish? Marcus asked, now standing nearby. Tommy took a breath. It's called the last supper we never had. It's the meal I was planning to make the night I was arrested. Sophie's 6th birthday was coming up. I had planned a 7-course tasting menu just for her, a grown-up meal to celebrate her becoming a big kid. I never got to make it. So you're making it now? Isabella asked. 11 years later? No, Tommy said. I'm making what it became in my mind over 11 years of missing her. Every birthday I wasn't there for. Every recital I missed. Every moment I lost. It's all in this dish. Childhood and loss and the passage of time and the stubborn refusal to stop loving someone even when they're gone. The kitchen was silent. What's the main component? Antoine asked professionally. Duck, Tommy said. Her favorite, but prepared 3 different ways representing 3 different ages. Duck breast seared pink for her childhood pure and innocent. Duck confit for her adolescence preserved, changed but recognizable. Duck consomme for her future clarified, refined, elegant. All served together with elements from every year I missed. 16 components for 16 years. That's impossible to plate, Marcus said. 16 components on one dish? Not if you think of it as a timeline, Tommy said, walking to a blank plate. He began sketching with his finger, showing placement. Linear presentation. Past to future. Each element tells 1 year's story. It's insane, Antoine said. But he was smiling. It's absolutely insane. Which means it's perfect. They worked through the night. Tommy led them through each component of his dish, while simultaneously helping them refine their own courses. Bernard supervised, offering notes, pushing them harder. By 6 a.m., they were ready. By noon, they'd done 3 complete run-throughs of the entire menu. By 4 p.m., they'd perfected timing. At 6 p.m., the Michelin inspectors arrived. They were a trio. The lead inspector, Monsieur Dubois from Paris, and his 2 assistants. They were seated at a private table in the center of the dining room, given full view of the kitchen through the glass partition. This is it, Victoria said to the kitchen staff. Everything we've worked for. Don't screw it up. Inspiring speech, Marcus muttered. Shut up and make dessert, Victoria replied, but she was smiling. The first course went out. Antoine's deconstructed buff bourguignon. They watched through the kitchen window as Monsieur Dubois took his first bite. His eyebrows raised. He took a second bite. Then he set down his fork and made a note. Can't read him, Isabella whispered. Wait, Bernard said calmly. Second course. Third course. Each received the same response, careful tasting, note-taking, no visible emotion. Then came the 5th course. Tommy's dish. The last supper we never had. The plate was a masterwork. 16 components arranged chronologically, each representing 1 year of Sophie's life. Colors transitioning from bright childhood yellows to deeper adolescent purples to elegant adult golds. They watched Monsieur Dubois study the plate for a full minute before tasting anything. Then he began, methodically, trying each component in order. Halfway through, he stopped. He set down his utensils. He removed his glasses and cleaned them. That's bad, Antoine whispered. He's stalling. Or processing, Bernard said. Monsieur Dubois put his glasses back on and continued. When he finished the last component, He sat back in his chair and stared at the empty plate. Then he did something inspectors never do during an evaluation. He called over the server. "Please ask Chef Sullivan to come to the table." The kitchen erupted in whispers. "I'll go with you," Antoine said immediately. "We all go," Isabella added. "We're a team." Tommy, Antoine, Isabella, and Marcus walked into the dining room together, Bernard and Victoria following close behind. They approached the table with forced confidence. "You wanted to see me?" Tommy asked. Monsieur Dubois looked up at him with an expression that was hard to read. "I need to know something, Chef Sullivan. This dish, the Last Supper we never had, please explain it to me." Tommy took a breath. "It's a personal dish. About loss and time, and no," Monsieur Dubois interrupted. "I understand the concept. What I need to know is this, that component, the seventh one, the small quenelle of duck liver with the cherry gel and gold leaf. Why is it positioned slightly off the line? Everything else is perfectly aligned, but that one element is rotated 15 degrees counterclockwise." Tommy felt his heart stop. He'd thought no one would notice that detail. "That element represents the 7th year," Tommy said quietly. "The year my daughter turned 12. The year she started dance seriously. She fractured her ankle that year and thought her dream was over. But she worked through it, came back stronger. The rotation represents that disruption, that moment when the path changes, but continues." Monsieur Dubois stared at him. "You're telling me that in a 17-component dish, a 15-degree rotation of a single element carries specific narrative meaning?" "Yes," Tommy said. "Every component tells a story. Every placement, every angle, every color has purpose." "Impossible," one of the assistant inspectors said. "No one thinks at that level of detail." "Thomas Sullivan does," Bernard said from behind them. "He always has." Monsieur Dubois stood up. He looked at Tommy for a long moment, then did something unprecedented. He extended his hand. "Chef Sullivan, in my 30 years as an inspector, I have never tasted food that made me understand someone else's life so completely. That dish was not just food. It was memoir. It was poetry. It was love made tangible." He turned to his assistants. "Note this, Le Ciel Idéal not only maintains its 3 stars. I am recommending a special commendation for innovation and emotional depth. This is what the culinary world should aspire to." The dining room erupted in applause. Staff members who'd been pretending not to listen came out of the shadows, clapping and cheering. Victoria looked like she might faint from relief. Antoine was crying openly. Marcus and Isabella were hugging. But Tommy just stood there, overwhelmed. "Chef Sullivan," Monsieur Dubois said quietly, so only Tommy could hear. "I know who you are. I know what happened 11 years ago. Many of us in the culinary world believed you were innocent. This meal proves what we always suspected, that you are not just a talented chef, but an artist who sees food as human connection. Don't hide anymore. The world needs what you can create." "Thank you," Tommy managed to say. As the inspectors returned to their remaining courses, Sophie appeared from the back office where she'd been watching on the kitchen monitors. "Dad," she said, running up to hug him again. "That was incredible. The dish about me, I can't believe you remembered all those details." "I remember everything," Tommy said. "Every birthday I missed. Every moment I wasn't there. It's all here." He tapped his chest. "It never left." "Can I ask you something?" Sophie said. "What happens now with us?" Tommy looked at his daughter, 16 years old, so grown up, yet still his little girl. "I don't know. That's up to you. And your mother. I don't want to disrupt your life." "You're not disrupting," Sophie said. "You're completing it. There's a difference." Over Sophie's shoulder, Tommy saw Antoine, Isabella, and Marcus watching. His team. His kitchen family. Bernard was smiling that knowing smile of his. And Victoria was already on her phone, probably calling her lawyers about Tommy's case. True to her word. "Mr. Sullivan?" A server approached nervously. "There's someone at the door asking for you. She says her name is Karen Sullivan." Tommy's stomach dropped. Karen. His ex-wife. Sophie's mother. Sophie grabbed his hand. "I called her after the 4th course. I told her you were alive and she needed to come here. She was." "Shocked. I bet she was," Tommy said faintly. He walked to the entrance, where a woman he'd once loved stood waiting. She looked older, tired, and deeply conflicted. "Tommy," Karen said. "You're alive." "I'm alive," he confirmed. They stood there in awkward silence before Karen spoke again. "Sophie told me everything. About the Instagram post, about finding you, about the dish you made, about how you've been alive this whole time." "I can explain," Tommy started. "Don't," Karen interrupted. "I know why you stayed away. Because I told you to. After the conviction, when you were in prison, I told you that Sophie would be better off thinking you were dead than knowing her father was a criminal. That was my choice, my cruelty." Her voice broke. "I thought I was protecting her, but I was just protecting myself from having to explain your absence, from having to face that I'd married and trusted someone who. But now I've read everything. The case files, the appeals, the evidence that never got heard. Tommy, I think you really were innocent." "I was," Tommy said simply. "But I couldn't prove it, and I lost everything trying, including us," Karen said, tears forming. "I'm so sorry. For not believing you. For taking Sophie away. For telling her you were dead. I was scared and angry and I made terrible choices." "We all did," Tommy said. "But maybe it's not too late to make better ones." Karen looked through the restaurant window at Sophie, who was talking animatedly with Bernard. "She's missed you every day. Even when she thought you were a memory. She needs you, Tommy." "And you?" Tommy asked carefully. "Where do you fit in all this?" "I don't know," Karen admitted. "I remarried. David is a good man. He's been a good stepfather to Sophie. But he's not her father. You are. And she deserves to have you in her life." "Thank you," Tommy said, "for bringing her here. For not running when you found out." "Don't thank me," Karen said. "Just be there for her now. That's all I ask." Sophie came running up to them. "So, are you two going to make this weird, or are we going to be a functional modern family?" Despite everything, both Tommy and Karen laughed. "I vote functional," Sophie said. "Dad's back from the dead. Mom admits she made mistakes. We all move forward. Deal?" "Deal," Karen said softly. "Deal," Tommy agreed. As Karen and Sophie left together, Sophie promising to return tomorrow to talk more, Tommy felt a hand on his shoulder. "Antoine, that," the French chef said, "was the most emotionally exhausting service of my entire career. And I once cooked for the president of France." Tommy laughed, feeling lighter than he had in years. "Thank you for giving me a chance, for not throwing me out when you learned who I was." "I did want to throw you out," Antoine admitted. "But Bernard convinced me that ego has no place in a kitchen that's trying to create art." He was right. "Tonight, we made art together." "We did," Tommy agreed. Bernard joined them, leaning on his cane. "Thomas, Victoria wants to discuss making you permanent executive chef. Antoine would move to creative director. Are you interested?" Tommy looked around the kitchen. His new family, his second chance, his redemption made real. "Yes," he said, "but on one condition. We create a culinary training program for ex-convicts, people who've made mistakes but deserve another chance. We teach them skills, give them jobs, show them there's life after prison." "That's a beautiful idea," Isabella said. "I'll help run it." "Me too," Marcus added. "My sister would have loved that kind of program. Giving people hope." Antoine nodded. "The kitchen has room for more redemption stories. Not just yours. Everyone deserves the chance you got tonight." Victoria appeared, having finished celebrating with investors. "I heard the proposal. Yes. We'll fund it." "Call it what?" Tommy thought for a moment, then smiled. "Jake's Kitchen. After my friend who died. He always said the best food came from second chances." "Jake's Kitchen it is," Victoria said. "Now go home. Rest. Tomorrow, we start building something bigger than just a restaurant. We build a legacy." As Tommy walked out of La Cille Idal that night, past the Michelin stars that would stay on the door, past the reservations that would be impossible to get for months, he felt something he hadn't felt in 11 years. He felt like himself. His phone buzzed. A text from Sophie. "I'm proud of you, Dad. Can't wait to know you again." Tommy stood on the Manhattan sidewalk, cold October wind on his face, tears in his eyes, and smiled. The dishwasher had become a chef again. But more importantly, the father had found his daughter, and the man who'd lost everything had discovered that redemption wasn't about reclaiming the past. It was about creating a better future. 6 months after that transformative night, Lucille Idal had become more than just a restaurant. It had become a movement. Jake's Kitchen, the training program Tommy had envisioned, now occupied the entire basement level. 12 ex-convicts were enrolled in the first cohort, learning everything from knife skills to plating, from food safety to kitchen management. Tommy taught alongside Antoine, Isabella, and Marcus 3 evenings a week. No, Roberto, Tommy said patiently to a 34-year-old former drug dealer who was attempting to julienne carrots. Let the knife do the work. You're forcing it. Cooking is about control, not power. Roberto adjusted his grip and tried again. This time, the cuts were cleaner, more precise. There you go, Tommy encouraged. See? You've got this. Chef Sullivan called Maria, a 28-year-old woman who'd served for years, for embezzlement. Can you check my bechamel? I think I oversalted it. Tommy tasted her sauce. It's perfect. Trust yourself more. You know what you're doing. That's the hard part, Maria admitted. Trusting myself. After everything I did wrong, after all the mistakes. How do you learn to trust yourself again? Tommy set down the spoon and looked at his students, all of them watching, waiting for his answer. This question was really everyone's question. You start small, Tommy said. You make one good choice, then another, then another. Eventually, those choices build into a pattern. The pattern builds into character, and character builds into trust. But it doesn't happen overnight. It's a daily practice. Did you trust yourself again? Asked James, a 45-year-old who'd served 10 years for armed robbery. After everything that happened to you? Honestly, Tommy said, not for a long time. I spent 2 years washing dishes because I didn't trust myself to cook. I was terrified that I'd forgotten how, or worse, that I never really had it to begin with. That maybe my success was just luck that ran out. What changed? Roberto asked. I was forced to try, Tommy said, and I realized something. The skills might get rusty, but they don't disappear. The passion might get buried, but it doesn't die. You just have to be brave enough to dig it back up. Antoine entered the training kitchen, clipboard in hand. Tommy, we have 3 graduates ready for interviews upstairs. The Plaza Hotel is looking for prep cooks. Are they ready? Tommy looked at the 3 students. Antoine indicated Maria, Roberto, and a quiet man named David who'd served 6 years for assault. 6 months ago, none of them could properly hold a knife. Now they could work a professional line. They're ready, Tommy confirmed. Upstairs in the main kitchen, the dinner service was in full swing. Lucille Idal had maintained its 3 Michelin stars and added something more valuable. A reputation as the most emotionally resonant restaurant in New York. Tables were booked for months in advance, but more importantly, they'd inspired 12 other restaurants to start similar programs. Jake's Kitchen was becoming a model for redemption through culinary arts. Sophie visited twice a week now, sometimes helping with prep, sometimes just sitting in the corner doing homework while Tommy worked. The awkwardness of their reunion had gradually softened into something real, something like a father-daughter relationship being rebuilt from scratch. Dad, Sophie called from her corner table. I got my acceptance letter. Tommy's head snapped up from the sauce he was reducing. From Juilliard? Full scholarship for their dance program, Sophie said, her smile so wide it looked painful. I start in the fall. Tommy dropped everything and rushed over to hug her, not caring that his hands were covered in sauce. Sophie, that's incredible. I'm so proud of you. Mom cried for like an hour. Sophie laughed. David took us out to celebrate. They want you to come to dinner this weekend. Like, all of us together. Tommy pulled back slightly. You sure that's not going to be weird? It'll definitely be weird, Sophie said. But weird is our new normal. Besides, David wants to thank you for inspiring him to volunteer at a youth center. He says your redemption story made him realize he wasn't doing enough with his privilege. Your stepfather sounds like a good man, Tommy said sincerely. He is, Sophie agreed. He's not trying to replace you, Dad. He's just there. And that's okay. There's room in my life for both of you. Have I told you lately that you're wise beyond your years? Tommy asked. Not in the last 3 days, Sophie replied with a grin. Bernard Laurent arrived for his weekly consultation, moving slower now but still sharp as ever. He'd become something of a permanent fixture, unofficially mentoring the entire kitchen staff. "Thomas," Bernard called. "I have news. The James Beard Foundation wants to reinstate your award. They've reviewed your case extensively and agree that your conviction was unjust. They're planning a ceremony. You'd be the first chef in their history to have an award reinstated." Tommy felt his breath catch. "When?" 3 months from now, May 15th. "They want you to prepare a dish for the ceremony. Something that represents your journey." "What would I even make?" Tommy wondered aloud. "You'll figure it out," Bernard said with confidence. "You always do." That evening, after service ended and the kitchen was clean, Tommy found himself alone with his thoughts. He pulled out his phone and scrolled to a number he'd saved but never called. After a moment's hesitation, he dialed. Sullivan Law Offices, answered a professional voice. "Hi, I'm looking for information about reopening a criminal case," Tommy said. "Specifically, arson and negligent homicide charges from 11 years ago." "One moment, please." Victoria had kept her promise. Her lawyers had been working on Tommy's case for months, gathering new evidence, tracking down witnesses, building a case for wrongful conviction. A different voice came on the line. "Mr. Sullivan, this is attorney Patricia Chen. I've been expecting your call. I have significant updates regarding your case." "Good updates?" Tommy asked hopefully. "Very good. We found Richard Castellano's former business partner, a man named Vincent Moretti. He's dying of cancer and wants to clear his conscience. He's willing to testify that Castellano paid him to arrange the arson at your restaurants. We have bank records, phone logs, everything we need." Tommy's legs went weak. He sat down hard on a kitchen stool. "After all these years, we can actually prove it." "We can prove it," Patricia confirmed. "I'm filing for exoneration next week. Given the strength of the evidence, I expect the DA to move quickly. You could be officially cleared within 6 months." After hanging up, Tommy just sat in the quiet kitchen, letting it sink in. 11 years of carrying the weight of a crime he didn't commit. 11 years of being called a criminal, a murderer, negligent. And now, finally, the truth would come out. He thought about Jake Martinez, his sous chef and best friend who died in those fires. Jake, who'd believed in him completely, who'd never doubted Tommy's innocence even as the evidence mounted against him. "I'm going to clear our names, brother," Tommy whispered to the empty kitchen. "Both of ours." 3 months later, on May 15th, Tommy stood in the James Beard Foundation's Grand Hall, surrounded by the culinary world's elite. Sophie sat in the front row with Karen and David. Antoine, Isabella, Marcus, and Bernard were at a table nearby. His Jake's Kitchen students filled an entire section, wearing their new chef whites. The foundation's president approached the podium. "Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we correct a historic injustice. Thomas Sullivan was awarded the James Beard Rising Star Chef Award 11 years ago. Before his wrongful conviction, that conviction has now been officially vacated. Thomas Sullivan's name has been cleared. And tonight, we not only reinstate his award, we add to it the Humanitarian Award for his work with Jake's Kitchen." The applause was thunderous. Tommy walked to the stage, overwhelmed. "I'm not great with speeches," Tommy began, his voice shaking slightly. "I'm better with food, so I'll keep this brief. 11 years ago, I lost everything. My restaurants, my reputation, my freedom, my family. I spent 6 years in prison for a crime I didn't commit. And when I got out, I spent 2 more years hiding because I was too broken to try again." He paused, looking at Sophie. "But my daughter found me, and she reminded me that hiding isn't living. That shame isn't justice. That the only way to honor the people we've lost, like my friend Jake Martinez, who died in those fires, is to keep creating, keep building, keep loving." Jake's Kitchen exists because Jake believed everyone deserved a second chance. He believed that food could heal, could connect, could transform. Tonight, I stand here not just as a chef who got his reputation back, but as someone who learned that redemption isn't about erasing the past. It's about using the past to build a better future. To everyone who's made mistakes, you're not defined by your worst day. To everyone who's lost everything, you can rebuild. To everyone who's hiding, come out. The world needs what you can create. He held up his award. "This belongs to Jake. To my students at Jake's Kitchen. To Bernard, who never stopped believing. To my team at Lucille, who gave me a chance when they had no reason to. And to Sophie, who reminded me that fathers don't give up. The standing ovation lasted 5 minutes. After the ceremony, as guests mingled and celebrated, a young man approached Tommy nervously. He was maybe 22, with Jake's eyes and Jake's smile. "Chef Sullivan, I'm Miguel Martinez, Jake's son." Tommy felt his heart stop. "Miguel, I didn't know you'd be here. The foundation invited me," Miguel said. "I wanted to meet the man my dad died believing in. He used to talk about you all the time, about how you were going to change the culinary world together. Your father was the best man I knew," Tommy said, his voice thick. "I'm so sorry I couldn't save him." "It wasn't your fault," Miguel said firmly. "I read the case files, the exoneration documents. You were set up. My dad knew that. Even before the trial, he told my mom that if anything happened to him, it wouldn't be because of you." Tears streamed down Tommy's face. Thank you for telling me that. I'm starting culinary school in the fall," Miguel said, following in his footsteps. "And yours. I'd be honored if you'd mentor me." "I'd be honored to teach Jake's son," Tommy replied. 1 year after the Michelin evaluation that changed everything, Jake's Kitchen had expanded to 5 cities. Over 60 ex-convicts had graduated from the program. 42 of them now worked in professional kitchens across the country. Tommy had opened a second restaurant, a casual, affordable place in Brooklyn called Second Course. It served high-quality food at prices working families could afford. Half the staff were Jake's Kitchen graduates. Sophie was thriving at Juilliard, performing in showcases and visiting her father every Sunday for family dinner, a tradition that now included Karen, David, and often Sophie's friends. On a quiet Tuesday evening, Tommy stood in Lucille's kitchen, training 3 new students. One was a 50-year-old woman who'd served 15 years for fraud. One was a 25-year-old man just released after 5 years for drug charges. One was a 38-year-old father of 3 who'd made one terrible choice in desperation. Cooking, Tommy told them as they practiced knife skills, is about transformation. You take raw ingredients sometimes broken, sometimes damaged, sometimes discarded, and you transform them into something nourishing, something beautiful, something that feeds not just the body but the soul. That's what we're doing here. Not just learning to cook, learning to transform ourselves. One day, one dish, one choice at a time. The 50-year-old woman, whose hands shook slightly, looked up. "What if we fail? What if we can't do this?" "Then you try again tomorrow," Tommy said simply. "The only way you truly fail is if you stop trying." I washed dishes for 2 years because I was afraid to try. Those were 2 years I'll never get back. Don't make my mistake. Try. Fail if you have to, but keep trying. That night, after everyone left, Tommy walked through the quiet restaurant. He paused at the photo wall. Bernard had installed pictures of every Jake's Kitchen graduate, their names engraved on brass plates below their photos. At the center was a larger photo of Jake Martinez, smiling in his chef whites, taken the week before he died. "We did it, brother," Tommy whispered. "We changed the world. Not the way we planned, but maybe the way we were always meant to. Through second chances, through love, through believing people can be more than their worst moments." He touched the photo gently. "Rest easy, Jake. Your kitchen is full, and it always will be." As Tommy locked up and headed home, his phone buzzed. A text from Sophie, random thought. "When I have kids someday, you're teaching them to cook. No negotiation. Love you, Dad." Tommy smiled, feeling warmth spread through his chest. He texted back, "Deal. Love you too, Princess." He walked through Manhattan's spring evening, past restaurants where his former students now worked, past the culinary school that now offered scholarships in his name, past the plaza where his face would soon appear on a mural honoring chefs who gave back. But none of that mattered as much as Sophie's text, as much as knowing his daughter wanted him in her future, in her children's future. The dishwasher had become a chef again. The convicted criminal had been exonerated. The broken man had been made whole. But most importantly, the father had come home. And in the end, Tommy Sullivan realized that was the greatest redemption of all. Not the Michelin stars or the James Beard Awards. Not the training program or the new restaurants. Not even clearing his name. The greatest redemption was being loved again, being trusted again, being given the chance to be present for the moments that mattered. As he unlocked his apartment door, no longer a cramped studio, but a real home filled with Sophie's artwork and family photos, Tommy thought about the journey. From celebrated chef to convicted criminal to invisible dishwasher to redeemed mentor. Every step necessary, every moment meaningful. Because the true flavor of excellence, he'd learned, wasn't in expensive ingredients or perfect technique or even Michelin stars. It was in the courage to keep cooking after losing everything. It was in the belief that broken things, restaurants, reputations, relationships could be repaired. It was in teaching others that their mistakes didn't define their futures. And it was in the simple, profound act of making food with love and serving it with hope. Tommy Sullivan, once lost, was finally found. And he spent the rest of his life making sure no one else stayed lost as long as he had. One dish at a time, one student at a time, one second chance at a time.